PC2s, no, ACTH will not be produced by PC2s, correct?
No, it
What? What's the question?
ACTH.
Yes.
You said PC2 is only present in the hypothalamus, but it's going to cleave at the second position, right? It's not going to produce ACTH.
Yes.
PC1 is going to
It's
produce.
get French clip and
How can it make it PC2 be in the
Yeah,
hypothalamus?
if you clip it here and here, you will have this.
Yeah,
But that you said is only in the pituitary.
yeah, but you said.
So how can you go back up, or how does that happen? يعني the red one can only happen in the pituitary, but the blue one can happen in the hypothalamus.
That's
If
right.
إذا تنزل خلاص, how can you go back to خلص the hypothalamus?
Well, remember now, this is released in the blood. So it can go back to the hypothalamus, right? Okay. And I don't get, and what we are trying to do is we want to show you exactly where these convertases are. One of them is in the pituitary, or what do they do? You'll have to remember that. Okay. But remember, you can have the PC2, for example, act, and these products will be circulating, so they can get to the hypothalamus where PC1 can be. Excuse me, pituitary where PCM acts. Yes.
So this ACTH is not the same ACTH that's secreted from the...
No, it's the same ACTH.
No, I mean, but that's not how ACTH is secreted from the...
No, ACTH is secreted by the anterior pituitary. But sometimes this prohormone is also secreted. But this prohormone, as well as other hormones, they are not significant under normal circumstances. Now, why are we telling you about this? Now, if you are somebody with Addison's disease, you're going to have a lot of this prohormone, and you will have a lot of splicing, depending upon where you are in the pituitary or hypothalamus. So you will have a lot of these products that are not very important under normal circumstances.
Excuse me, doctor.
Yes, sir.
Just one question. You said ACTH, it's like, well, yeah. ACTH is high as we occur in Addison's disease.
Yes.
Isn't Addison's disease, there's a problem in to produce sufficient adrenocortical hormones?
That's right.
So how is ACTH increased? If it's
Now you
increased,
can have-
increased cortisol.
Okay, we will get into that, but Addison's disease can happen, يعني big, if you want to, the ultimate cause of Addison's is large amount of adrenocortical hormones. That can be caused by a tumor in the adrenal cortex that's releasing a lot of those, or a tumor in the anterior pituitary that's releasing a lot of ACTH. If you have high ACTH, it will continually stimulate the adrenal cortex to make a lot of adrenocortical hormones.
This insufficiency, when we're going to say insufficient adrenocortical hormones, if you're saying that ACTH is not executed,
Yeah, there are, you can, Addison's disease is defined as an increase in adrenocortical hormones. The cause can be a tumor in the adrenal cortex that's releasing of adrenocortical hormones, or it can be a tumor that's secreting a lot of ACTH. The adrenal cortex will then release a lot of cortisol. Okay, so again, going back to our figure here, if we have a lot of if we have a lot of these prohormones released, then we have Addison's disease or something like that, we will end up having a lot of MSHs on board. Remember melanocyte stimulating hormone? These can play a role in feeding as well as coloring, pigmentation of the skin. We also have, they can also act on lymphocytes. So therefore, while these are not very important probably in humans, in some animals, this melanocyte stimulating hormone is very important. And usually these animals, remember in humans we have anterior, posterior pituitary, but in animals they have something called pars intermedia, okay, and this is an area that lies between the posterior and pituitary and anterior pituitary. In humans, I think it's not very well developed. It's kind of avascular. But in some animals, it's quite developed, and it, of course, changes the pigmentation of these animals. If you have seen some of these shows on TV, you know, you have some Arctic foxes that can become black during the summer and white during the winter, and that's the result of melanocyte stimulating hormone. Okay, any questions about any of them? Any questions?
POMC.
What's your name? Ahmed.
POMC comes from the
Yes, and here are it. It comes from the same, yeah, it comes from with the HCDF. Yes, sir.
The fact that cortisol,
Hey guys, let's hear the question.
cortisol can be associated with obesity, yet cortisol increases the use of fatty acids. How does that work?
We will tell you in a minute. Yeah, you can become like obese here, from upper torso, like the buffalo. You've seen the buffalo? Yeah. Any other questions? Yes, sir. Yeah, Faisal. Yeah. You have a question? Okay, well now, so now we know everything we need to know about cortisol. Now what could go wrong? Everything is not always functioning normally. So you can have a small amount of cortisol released, which is not good, or you can have too much, which is also not good. So Addison's disease, Addison's disease is when you have very little. Sorry, I have been saying no, it's when you have very little cortisol secreted, and very often it's caused by atrophy of the adrenal glands. Okay? And 80% of the cases is probably caused by an autoimmune process that simply destroys these cells, or most of them. Okay? And of course, if you have, yeah, Shabab, what's wrong with you today? It's like you're on drugs or something. Yeah, Habib. You know, I'm talking and everybody's looking back. I guess it's the end of the semester. Okay, well, so most of the time this is caused by an immune process. So if you have an autoimmunity that's destroying these cells, they're not going to be making not only enough cortisol, but not enough aldosterone. And we will have the symptoms that you usually see with reductions in aldosterone or lack of aldosterone, which is depletion, volume depletion, probably a little reduction in blood pressure, hyperkalemia, a little reduction in osmolality, and usually acidosis probably, because these people cannot secrete enough hydrogen. And therefore, that's the kind of picture you will have. These people cannot live for too long if they are not treated right. The same thing is true with glucocorticoid deficiency. Remember now, the number one effect of glucocorticoids, well, the cortisol, is to stimulate gluconeogenesis. And we will see when we talk about insulin and glucose control and diabetes and all that. That's very important to maintain glucose concentrations that are quite normal between meals. So if you do not, cortisol helps it, that insulin does too, but cortisol also you need it for that. And therefore, if you have a small amount of cortisol on board, you will have these people not able to maintain a normal glucose concentration between meals. Not only that, they will also have problems with the mobilizations of proteins. Yeah, but if I'm talking and you're talking, you're not going to hear. Yeah, don't ask him. So you're the victim? Or don't ask him, yeah. Ask him when you're outside. So, also, of course, these patients, if they have very low levels of cortisol, they cannot handle any kind of stress. Okay? And again, they will not be able to respond by increasing the amount of cortisol like everybody else can when they are stressed in under stressful situations, whether surgery, or anything like this.
But sir, even though the immune response will still be higher than normal, right?
The immune response?
The immune cells will be more active, but still...
Yeah, you're releasing the effects of cortisol that have a depressing effect on the immune system. But again, I mean, it's really not good. And you cannot, we usually, what you get from an increase in the immune response is really not, does not replace the effect of cortisol as hormones that we need when we're stressed.
So why is glucose an energy problem? Because shouldn't cortisol in starvation?
What's the question?
In starvation, suppose cortisol it immobilizes protein, immobilizes
Not in
free fatty
starvation.
acids.
When you increase cortisol.
Yeah, so we can get energy from other sources. It doesn't have to be
Yeah, but
fat.
for how long can you handle that?
Okay, and then why does metabolism go down? Shouldn't cortisol make you sluggish?
Yeah, لأنه you cannot يا شباب look this way. When you have cortisol, okay, you cannot, if you don't have cortisol or extremely low levels of cortisol, are you going to be able to control your glucose between meals?
No.
No, so that's not good. How can that be good for metabolism? You will not be able to mobilize fatty acids as well, right? And these are mobilized by cortisol too.
I'm sure there's something else that will immobilize it.
They mobilize also proteins. ليش؟ لأنه they will, this way you will have a lot of amino acids for gluconeogenesis. At least that's one of the good things or the things that it does.
Doctor, is there a synthetic cortisol like
Yes.
a normal plant?
Of course.
From what?
Like from a plant or from...
Yeah, I don't know, we can make it in the lab.
No, something that's يعني إنه تصير you can take cortisol.
This is
and
healthy,
release
what?
stress.
Steroids aren't healthy.
Okay, if it's not good for you, you would not have it. I mean, it's good. We are telling you what we know about it. We're not debating whether it's good or not. Of course it's good. I mean, you go nuts if you're stressed and you don't have cortisol. يا عبد الإله يا شباب. Okay, so now if you do not have, if you have very little or no cortisol, what's going to happen to ACTH? Yeah, high, very high. What's going to happen to this pro-hormone that POMC that we talk about? What's happened to MSH? So you will start having colors that are different, pigmentation in some areas. How do you treat these people? You give them replacement cortisol, immunocorticoid, and in short, you can go. And especially, of course, if you have somebody with Addison's disease and you're about to take him to the hospital for surgery, you want to make sure you want to give them a large dose of cortisol. Cushing syndrome now, that's the one with the, where you're making a lot of cortisol. And again, sometimes it can happen when you have an adenoma that's secreting a lot of ACTH. So these patients are not going to have a lot of cortisol only, they will have a lot of cortisol, a lot of ACTH. But if the, and I'm talking in general here, how about if the problem is resulting from a tumor in the adrenal cortex that's releasing a lot of cortisol? They will have increased cortisol, right? And this tumor is making a lot. What about ACTH? It will be decreased a lot. That's right. I think you're, and how do you, there is an dexamethasone test, remember now, and this works better theoretically than practically, but dexamethasone, you remember Salman, what is it? It's synthetic.
30 times.
30 times as,
And no minute.
so you know,
corticoid.
you can give a dexamethasone challenge in order to determine whether the problem we're having is caused by a tumor in the anterior pituitary that's releasing a lot of ACTH, well, it's caused by an increase in cortisol from the adrenal cortex. Okay? Because if you give a cortisol from outside, and you have, how is that going to have an impact on ACTH? It will decrease it, but if you have a tumor in the anterior pituitary, tumors don't listen to dexamethasone or cortisol, it will continue to secrete a lot of ACTH.
You remove it.
But if the problem is in